Friends, let me tell you a very fascinating Buddhist story. It's about the making of the Buddhist flag and how, without indulging into any violence, but with logic, love, truth, and standing firm on one's convictions, the Buddhists of Sri Lanka, some 150 years ago, established that Buddhism is one of the greatest religions in the world. Some 150 years ago, Buddhism was unknown all over the world. Now, Sri Lanka is a Buddhist country. How this transformation happened? It happened through Panadura debate. I am going to tell you about that debate today. The debate arose because one of the Christian missionaries delivered a talk on the soul at a chapel in Panadura on 12th June 1873. A week later, Thera Gunananda, a Buddhist monk, delivered a sermon in which he criticized the points raised by the Christian missionary. This naturally caused a lot of discussion, and finally both the parties agreed to hold a debate at Panadura. But this was not the only cause of the debate. The Christian missionaries had thought that the Buddhist monks were not educated, and so they could be easily defeated in the debate. But this was far from being the truth. The Buddhist monks were very familiar with Pali and Sanskrit texts like Nyaya Bindu, written by Dignaga, and Tark Shastra by Dharma Kirti. These are on the art of debating. So, they did not hesitate in accepting the challenge of debating in the public. The debates were held on 24th and 26th August 1873 near a vihara. The Christians employed their best debaters, and from Buddhist side, Thera Gunananda was there. The debate was held on the topics like karma, rebirth, nirvana, God, the soul, and also on the principles of dependent origination, pratya samupadda. When Christian debater spoke, only a few understood him. In complete contrast, when Gunananda Thera spoke, he spoke in plain language to counter the arguments, and the public greatly appreciated what he spoke. Gunananda Thera proved himself to be a debater par excellence. He had won the debate. On the conclusion of the second day of the debate, the crowd cried in a loud voice, "Sadhu, Sadhu." This displeased the Christians. When the crowd was getting out of control, Thera Gunananda appealed to the crowd to disperse. The crowd dispersed silently. The impact of the debate was tremendous, both locally and internationally. Domestically, it helped to revive and establish the identity and pride of the Sinhalese Buddhists. Internationally, it helped in bringing awareness about Buddhism in the West. Thousands of copies of the summary of the debate were published. A book, Buddhism and Christianity, Face to Face, by J.M. Peebles, was also published in the United States in 1879. Henry Steel Olcott, the co-founder of the Theosophical Society, read this book, and he was so overwhelmed by reading it that he came to Sri Lanka in May 1880. The arrival of Colonel Olcott in Sri Lanka accelerated the pace of activities to revive Buddhist movement. Colonel Olcott mentioned that Gunananda Thera was the most brilliant orator of the island, the terror of the missionaries, with a very intellectual head, most brilliant and powerful champion of the Sinhalese Buddhism. Colonel Olcott worked continuously for the revival of Buddhist cultures in Sri Lanka, India, and other countries of Asia. And he will be always honored in the pages of the Asian history. The death anniversary of Colonel Olcott, which falls on the 17th February, is celebrated throughout India and Southeast Asia, and particularly by the people of Sri Lanka, who have a special reverence for him. As a demonstration of their love and gratitude for him, a large photograph of him hangs in most of the Buddhist schools and colleges which he had established in Sri Lanka. Thus, Colonel Olcott had become interested in Oriental religions, especially Buddhism, while he was in the United States. And after he met H.P. Blavatsky and they formed the Theosophical Society, they came to India in 1878. And subsequently, both of them arrived in Sri Lanka on 17th May 1880. Sometime later, in the same month, both Colonel Olcott and Madame Blavatsky embraced Buddhism publicly in Galle, a town 75 miles from Colombo, on the south coast of the island, and thus began a new chapter in their lives and in the life of the Theosophical Society which they had established.